All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Matt here. Today, we're going to be talking about the best decks to play to finish off this ranked season. The ranked season will be ending in just a few days here. It was a pretty short ranked season. A lot of people had some mixed feelings about it, but one thing is for sure is that it is going to be wrapping up here soon. So the deck lists in today's video will be my recommendation to kind of get you there over the hump, or I guess for this final, push, I suppose, to maybe hit top 5,000, 10,000, 1,000, whatever you're going for. I do think these are going to be the best decks for you. This should be a quicker video today because nothing's really new in this video. We do have a weekly wild card, but everything we've talked about in the past is going to be reiterated a little bit in this video, but the deck lists might be updated, so feel free to skip ahead and skip around in the video using the timestamps down in the description below. Couple of things to talk about before we get into the deck lists. The first one is going to be the Pocket Mads Pocket Tournament Invitational Tournament happening this Sunday. This is going to be a really fun tournament. The live stream, I would heavily recommend that you guys tune in. It will be 128 of the best Pokemon Pocket players really in the world, all competing for that championship title. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Definitely tune in. We're taking a week off of having open tournaments, so I know, if you don't qualify for the Invitational, I'm sure there's other tournaments this weekend that you can participate in, but we wanted to do this to kind of wrap up the season here before going into, the new metagame, which is going to happen, when the new set comes out, when B2 releases, which, by the way, is our other bit of news before we get into the deck lists here. I wanted to share this with you guys because this is something that I learned yesterday, which is very, very interesting, which is going to be sort of a new release window for the upcoming expansion. Fantastical Parade B2. The release date is going to be on Wednesday, the 28th, January 28th. But what's really different about this is that the set is not going to be releasing with the daily reset like it typically has in every other set previously to Pokemon Pocket. That's very interesting. So as we see here, this is the official release times and release dates for the new expansion here. As we see, 5 p.m. Pacific time on January 28th. Again, this is very strange. So Eastern time, which is my time zone, it's going to be releasing at 8 p.m., which is really fun. So we're going to be able to do a nice, big event live stream on 8 p.m. We're going to be able to go live and be live, a little bit longer than we typically would for release streams, which is very, very fun. So I'm excited about that. So stay tuned and tune in to our live stream for the release of B2 on Wednesday next week at 8 p.m. here on the Pocket Mads channel and on Pocket Mads over on Twitch. Going to be a whole lot of fun. So I wanted to let you guys know that because some people might be surprised to learn if they don't know this information that the set release window is changing. It's not something they've done before, which is weird. You know what I mean? Which is why I wanted to mention it. Anyway, let's move in. And if you're curious about any of the new cards, we covered everything in the trailer in yesterday's video, so go check out that video if you would like to. All right, let's get into the decks. So the first deck list that we're going to talk about today is Crobat. Crobat has been sort of this late season, progression. It's every season at the end of it, we get sort of a new deck or an old deck that really pops up and ends up being quite good, in the metagame. And I think Crobat really is that example here over the last week. It's been performing well in online tournaments. We talked about this last Friday, which I do think, again, not much has really changed here. Crobat would be a really great example. This is also a bit of a high roll card. I have compared this deck and Crobat particularly to Hydreigon. It's sort of, as you can see in this deck list, it sort of fits the exact same way that a lot of people are playing Hydreigon. So instead of, playing, Dino and Hydreigon and Rare Candies, we're just playing Zubat and Crobat. And this does offer a few distinct advantages here. Crobat, of course, cannot deal as much damage as Hydreigon, but since it only has a 1 energy attack cost, it does actually fit into the archetype and play very similarly. The upside to Crobat is that we don't deal any damage, of course, to ourselves after we are accelerating energies, which we're not doing if we're Crobat, and we have more HP, right? So that's sort of the advantage. In some matchups, that extra bit of damage in the early game potentially with Hydreigon could be advantageous, but Crobat here does a little bit less damage, a little bit more damage over time with the Poison Tick and Poison Barb and Nihilego, but it has more HP, so it's going to stick around a little bit longer, and we can still, of course, play Nihilego to deal with Oricorios quite easily, which is nice, and of course Mega Absol here to finish off the game. So the whole idea here is to force your opponent to go through a Crobat EX and then Mega Absol, or maybe even double Crobat EXs, very similarly to how you would play Hydreigon. This is still, I would categorize this as like a high roll deck because it is sort of an early rare candy based strategy, just like Hydreigon is, but it's a little bit it's just a little different, It's just a different type of Pokemon. You're trading a little bit of explosive damage for a little bit more survivability and sustain in terms of the higher HP amount. So very interesting. And of course, we don't have to play in DD if you're playing Crobat, which I think is a pretty big advantage. And here you go, Crobat. I really would recommend it. The one theme for today's video is that everything we're going to talk about is basically a high roll strategy. You hear me use that term a lot. If you don't know what I mean, it's basically decks that are inherently inconsistent in a lot of ways, but very strong potentially either early or in the mid game, right? There's high risk, high reward. And these are the deck lists that I would recommend playing in ranked right now, because it really is sort of a free for all at the end of the season. So you're going to have to just roll the dice and hope that you can go on some big win streaks. I think that this has really been the metagame for ranked battles ever since they added win streaks to Master Ball. It just is kind of worth it, at least in a short time frame, to play things that are very explosive and have high potential. You might lose 5 in a row, but guess what? You might win 5 in a row, and it's going to be a net positive because of the win streak bonuses. So that's what the theme of all of the decks in this video are basically all just the high roll decks relevant in the metagame, which, to be honest, most decks in the current meta are high roll. There's a couple of non-high roll decks and a couple anti-meta decks and whatnot, but in this video, it's going to be all high roll. Next up, we have Dark Greninja. And yeah, I really do think Dark Greninja is also a high roll strategy for a lot of the same reasons that any other deck is, which is, of course, you know, not playing middle evolutions and just playing rare candy, and potentially, you know, getting that Greninja out early. What I do like about this deck list, though, is that it's high roll and it's control. That's sort of my nickname for Dark Greninja, is high roll control, because it is basically a high roll deck. It's very inconsistent in a lot of ways, but extremely powerful if all of the pieces fall together properly. Greninja is the meta. That's the reality right now. If you're playing a top meta deck, it's probably playing Greninja. There are some examples, or I guess some, you know, exceptions to that. But again, you know, we're looking to get win streaks. We're looking to play high power decks, and Greninja does fit that bill. This wouldn't be as high on my list of recommendations as other decks, just because I don't think the upside potential to this deck is as high as some of the other decks in this, you know, in this video, just because the overall damage output's a little bit low. You know what I mean? It's a bit more of a slow grind deck, so it's less fast paced, which, you know, sometimes is actually a really good thing in tournament play, but in ranked, you kind of want to play a faster deck list. So I wanted to include this because it is a high roll deck. It is strong, but it wouldn't be at the top of my list in terms of recommendations. But yeah, again, another deck list that's been around for quite some time, has not changed really at all. So at the end of the day, you know, it's Greninja, it's Dark Greninja, right? Chingling is still a good card, right? So Chingling, Water Shuriken, Cyrus pings, you know, Darkrai ping, and then, you know, late game Absol to discard supporter cards. It's a control deck, but it's a really good one, and it's, you know, quite strong. Next up is Blaziken. Sorry, I gotta keep adjusting the thing. The next up is Blaziken, and I do feel pretty strongly that that Blaziken is a legitimate factor in the metagame. I don't think it's really caught on in terms of its meta share and its play rate as much as maybe other decks are. And I really do think that comes down to the fact that it's not Altaria. The Mega Pokemon have really been kind of filtered really into just sort of playing Altaria, because that is sort of the de facto Mega Pokemon, and that is until Gardevoir comes out, as we know, which is coming. Blaziken's a very good deck, and it does not play Greninja. So I know for those people out there that just don't want to play a Greninja deck, I think Blaziken is one of the best options for you. Even Altaria decks now are kind of a Greninja decks. It's really just, again, what's happened to the metagame. And theoretically, you could play Blaziken, you know, with the Greninja, but I think that with Tongue Whip, Heatmore, and with Furfrou and Flame Patch, I think that this deck list is very sound. I do think at this point, Blaziken's been out for so long, we haven't got that many new cards relevant to this archetype that it's sort of been figured out for quite some time here. We are playing double Cyrus in this deck list. Again, a little bit more of a high roll type build here. Some people play one Sabrina, one Cyrus. I think Sabrina's really, really good into Hydreigon. It's good into Suicune Greninja in the early game, but, you know, as we know, Cyrus is, you know, the win condition card in the game. So, you know, feel free to swap one of the Cyruses for Sabrina, but I think right now you're probably going to get a little bit more value out of just sort of drawing into the Cyruses and that being your win condition. We'd rather do that maybe a bit more consistently. But yeah, I mean, this is the deck list, right? Lily is a big advantage here. This theme here, this interaction between Mega Blaziken having 210 HP and access to Lily is going to be just sort of a small thread of an example of what we're going to be getting next set with Mega Gardevoir. It's one of the biggest advantages to these Stage 2 Mega Pokemon. The high amount of healing with Lily and the 210 HP, and now we're going to be getting that turned up to like 11 with Gardevoir, and I think it's going to be actually a legitimate, you know, meta strategy. I think Gardevoir is going to be very difficult to deal with for a number of different decks, mainly just because its high HP amount and its ability to heal for not only 60 some turns with Lily, but for 90 for some turns when you have the new Diantha supporter with it. If you want to know more about that, check out yesterday's video. But yeah, Blaziken is sort of, again, at this point, I would say Blaziken's probably the #1 example that I would tell people people if they were looking to build a Gardevoir deck. We'll likely build some early deck lists, next week, but this is the type of deck that I will be looking for, or looking at when it comes to sort of building a Gardevoir deck, because they are very similar Pokemon, stage 2 energies, very, very similar here. I think that we're going to be building a very similar deck with Gardevoir, except without Cyrus's, without double Cyrus, maybe without Rocky Helmet, and of course Flame Patch. We're going to be swapping Heatmore Furfrou, and we're likely going to be playing double Lily, double Diantha. It's going to be a very interesting deck list, but I'm actually quite excited for Gardevoir, and I think it's going to be quite strong, and I still think Blaziken's a good option, honestly. Okay, next up is Suicune Greninja. I mean, I have nothing else to say about it other than that it's Suicune and Greninja. Do people really want me to sit here and talk about this deck list? I guess just really quickly for the people that are maybe new to the channel or don't know what's going on really in the metagame. I think most people are typically longtime viewers here of the channel. But Suicune Greninja's been sort of a top meta deck for quite some time. It's been going down and down like incrementally as the seasons go on in terms of its overall effectiveness and its overall strength and meta share. But I would say that Suicune Greninja is still a top 5 deck in the game right now, and it likely will continue to be so. However, next set, there is looking to be a couple of really strong counter meta options. So this very well could be, and I'm not saying it's the case, but this really could be the last season or the last week that you can play Suicune Greninja as like a top tier deck list. Now that's just speculation. I do think Gardevoir has a ton of potential into this matchup, so that could, definitely knock it down a peg. But I think for right now, Suicune Greninja is still like one of the, the default decks like in Pokemon Pocket. It's a bit of a high roll deck, but it's also probably more consistent than other high roll decks. It doesn't deal as much damage as some other deck lists, but it's very, very consistent and very strong. And it punishes decks that just don't have a really high, high value board state at some point in the game. Like Suicune Greninja is going to be there probably on turn 2, and it's going to be quite hard to deal with unless you have something really strong set up by then anyway, which is kind of what's going on in the meta, right? You have Suicune Greninja, and then you have the anti-meta with Magnezone or Oricorio, which I'm not recommending for this video, but you can, of course, play Magnezone or Oricorio. And then beside those two decks, everything's just sort of high roll. That's really all it is, So unless we get something else like Gardevoir, that's what the metagame is at the moment. So here's Suicune Greninja, 1 Frogadier, and that's basically it. One Giant Cape, 1 Mars, 1 Frogadier, 2 Cyrus, 1 Irida. Very, very standard. This is sort of just what people are playing right now, and I would recommend it. I really would. So here you go, Suicune and Greninja. Next up, guys, I gotta let you know, you gotta subscribe here. We're almost to 50,000 subscribers. 45% of you guys that watch my content, watch my videos, are not actually subscribed to the channel. So, if that's one of you, if you find yourself watching my content and enjoying it and appreciating it, but you're not subscribed, just consider hitting that subscribe button. It supports me, supports the community, and I would greatly appreciate it. Next up is going to be yet another Greninja deck list. Yeah, that's right. It's just another Greninja deck, but guess what? This time it's Altaria. So here's the thing with this deck list. I do think that as far as upside potential goes, this is the strongest deck in the game. I think a lot of people would agree with that. The potential to go turn 2 Mega Altaria 130 with Water Shuriken Greninja and Cyrus is just a little bit too much to handle. It's effectively 150 to any Pokemon you want on turn 2 with 190 HP Mega Pokemon. Very annoying. And if you don't end up getting that board state exactly on turn 2, we can kind of get there very consistently on turn 3 or turn 4 with access to Lily, Professor's Research, Pokeball, and Chingling to really slow the game down. Of course, Copycat. So this deck list has so many different options. The potential is just so high. Chingling fits in the deck very, very well. We're playing Sing Swablu because putting your opponent to sleep and effectively sometimes winning the game off RNG is kind of broken. Most people would kind of also agree that the Sing Swablu is kind of a toxic card, I would say. Definitely one of the most annoying things actively in the game. But yeah, man, it's just another high roll deck. It's very similar to Dark Greninja just in terms of like what the deck is. But the overall upside is a lot higher, and it just does a lot of damage. It's like if you were playing Suicune Greninja, but it was less consistent. But instead of dealing 80 damage with Suicune, you were hitting for 130, and you had more HP. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of just put the 2 and 2 together, and kind of realize how broken this deck can be. So that's all I really have to say about it. I think as far as high roll decks go, this is at the very, very top. I honestly would recommend this deck to finish off the ranked season. You might go on a 12-game win streak and really climb quite effectively. That's what I'm kind of here to tell you, is just play things that potentially can streak pretty hard if you get lucky. I will say, if you play this deck list, be careful what you ping with Greninja. Be careful when and how you use your Cyruses, and of course, don't forget to utilize that Sing Swablu. I know a lot of people that play this deck list don't keep Swablu on the board, right? It's fine, right? If you evolve that first Mega Altaria, but you want to keep the second one maybe unevolved, so that we can potentially Sing to stall for a couple of turns. That can be the difference between winning a game and not, right? So it's very interesting. An interesting deck list, but that's my one recommendation if you're playing this deck, is to kind of use the RNG to your utmost ability. Lastly is Hydreigon. It is, and I think there's a lot of ways to play Hydreigon. We kind of showcased that Crobat deck earlier in the video with the Nihilego Poison Bar package. Some people are playing that Poison package with Hydreigon, but I think if you're playing the Poison package, Crobat is actually just the better option. So if you're going to play Hydreigon now, I would utilize Chingling. We're playing one Zweilous in this deck list here, but you can also play the Leap over Absol, which does 30 damage to the bench. Also a good card, but it's more of a techie card. I think High Roll Hydreigon is just sort of here to kind of do 130 immediately and just win the game that way. So that's really what this deck's kind of based around, quite frankly. I even thought about maybe playing, like, if you're playing this deck list, like, I do like the one Zweilous and the one Chingling just because they're cards in the deck and they, limit the amount of times we lead Mega Absol. But, the thing with this deck list here is that we don't really care to lead Dino because we probably just want to evolve it on turn 2, whether we go first or second anyway, and start attacking. So I kind of thought about maybe playing things like a Pokecom in this deck, or potentially, playing things like May in the deck to maybe more consistently get the Hydreigon out, or get Zweilous out on turn 2 to not get KO'd. So I do think Rocky Helmet is kind of better. The Giant Cape and DD stuff loaded around a little bit. There really is several different ways to play Hydreigon, but this is like the most simple, straightforward version. It's kind of the recommendation that I would put in right now, is just to play the deck that's just going to do the one thing that you really want to do, and not really worry too much about all of like the ancillary pieces and other facets of the deck list that might improve certain matchups. Just focus on Hydreigon and winning the game that way, because 90% of the time, if you win a game, it's because of Hydreigon. So that's what we're kind of doing here. It's just running straight Hydreigon. And the one Chingling can help. It's just a good card to lead off with, right? You're never upset having Chingling in the active on turn 1, are you? You shouldn't, at least, most games. So yeah, Hydreigon, good card. Now, looking forward, I do think Hydreigon will be uniquely one of those decks that is actually quite good into Gardevoir. So we might see a very similar situation to what we did at the beginning of this season, where a lot of people end up playing a new deck list that is just week 2 Hydreigon. So, definitely look forward to that late week 1, early week 2 dominance of Hydreigon. Certainly something that we could see moving forward. I do suspect this is going to be a deck that's good into Gardevoir. I just don't really see how it's not going to be good into Gardevoir. But we'll have to see. And I know a lot of people love to play Hydreigon, so maybe that's not going to be like the most healthy thing in the meta, especially since like one of the key like anti-Hydreigon decks in the game is Suicune Greninja. So we'll have to see. There's definitely going to be some triangulation, rock, paper, scissors formation at the beginning of next season, and I think Hydreigon's probably going to be a part of that. We'll see what happens, honestly, but I think Hydreigon's probably around to stay. We are getting the new Galarian Obstagoon card, and I think Obstagoon is not as good as Hydreigon, quite frankly, but I could be wrong about that. I just think, the supporter that discards energies is broken, but the Pokemon itself, I think Hydreigon's better than Obstagoon. So I talked about that again in yesterday's video a little bit, but yeah, play Hydreigon. The wild card for this week is going to be Steelix, because, Mega Steelix got day 2 at our tournament this past weekend. It's been making a little bit of moves this week. I really just wanted to highlight this deck because we don't often get times to talk about Steel-type decks or Mega Steelix, and I do think that this deck has been performing very admirably, quite frankly. 4 tool cards in the deck. We are playing the Metal Arms Skarmory, which is kind of underrated as a card. It is actually a very aggressive and strong card in the game. Like, how many basic Pokemon for 1 energy can just hit for 50, right? With 80 HP, and you're going to have like a Steel Apron or a Rocky Helmet attached to it. There's a lot of potential here for this deck list, and I think Mega Steelix is a pretty decent closer, right? So the whole concept here is to go Skarmory into Skarmory, use Brox to kind of set up the Onix, and then, slowly set up Mega Steelix and have that as sort of your final Pokemon to win the game. That's literally the whole concept here. And it's really not that bad of a concept. It's definitely not like a high roll deck. It's kind of the opposite. It's more of a late game, slow roll deck. Even it's like a mix between like an aggro deck with Skarmory and a very sort of slow, consistent, but strong endgame board state with Mega Steelix. So it's an interesting deck list. Honestly, something that I do like. And again, if you really wanted to be the contrarian this week, week at the end of the season, if you just wanted to play something different, that's not Crobat, I guess. I think Mega Steelix is likely going to be, you know, that next best option. I know Jolteon's floating around. There's other decks in the game. I know there is. But I just wanted to highlight Steelix. You know, only 7 decks to talk about in today's video because, you know, I don't really feel that strongly about anything else, but there are other good options. So there you go. The wild card for this week is Mega Steelix with Skarmory. It's a steel type deck. As far as steel type decks go, it's probably one of the best. We are getting Mega Mawile, which is an interesting card. I'm not sure exactly how well that card will do, but I know some people will play 19 Trainer Mawile, and it'll be very annoying to deal with. Quite frankly, it's like Miltank. It's like Mega Miltank is what that card is. But the new item card actually is very interesting, and we talked about it yesterday. But Metal Core Booster. It's a one-turn item card, but it you know, reduces the damage you take by 50 for your Steel Pokemon, which is very substantial. Minus 50 is a big deal. Like if you use it twice, if you draw into that tool card, you know, that's minus 100 over a couple of turns. Like it's kind of a big deal. If we ever get like a Stage 2 Steel type Pokemon that has access to Lily and Metal Core Barrier, we're kind of in for you know, a bit of a run here, like a Mega Metagross or something like that. Who knows? Mega Aggron. Like there are Stage 2 Steel type Pokemon, Megas that could come to the game, and you know, we're kind of getting a quite of a strong package, you know, for those decks potentially coming. Mawile is a basic. Mega Steelix is of course a Stage 1 Pokemon, so maybe they're gonna wait to dump that onto us at some point. Maybe we get Mega Steelix. Who knows? I don't know. Or not Mega Steelix. Metagross. Who knows? You know, it's weird, right? Because like Mawile, Metagross, and Aggron are all Megas, but they're from Hoenn. You know, they're all from the same region. It's an interesting thing to note. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent, and we need to wrap up this video. It's a short one today, 20 minutes or so. Shout out to me for getting this video out and keeping it short. Again, not much new information here, but stay tuned for the Invitational live stream this weekend. Not only that, but all of the preemptive, you know, B2 content coming Monday and then Tuesday. And then, of course, Wednesday will be the set release, and hopefully we get some leaks and some data mines of the set list by then. You know, that would be pretty fun, I think, if we were to get that. But stay tuned. Lots of interesting content coming, lots of really cool things coming to Pokemon Pocket, and it's very exciting. So starting next week, and really all of February, I think is going to be very, very exciting for the game. So stay tuned. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Peace out. Have a good one. And yeah. Bye.